Good afternoon and welcome back to another ironic introduction to another video. Today I have a full abilities breakdown and guide for Quake, including some handcam footage. And for Quake, whenever someone asks how I got so good at her, my first recommendation is always check out Dork Lessons, 2 videos for it, how to Quake like a god, and why most people fail using Quake. This video isn't going to add anything insightful beyond those 2 videos. Those 2 videos really covers everything you need to learn about Quake. So if you're like looking for an ideal way to play her, that's really where I would start. But I had specific requests to make this video, so I don't want to disappoint, and so here it is. Now what I have on the screen though, like a fair warning, is my hand cam setup. I don't have a like dedicated video recording device other than my phone, and obviously I needed to use my phone in order to play the game. So I have this $20 Logitech webcam that I use so you guys can see me in the corner of the screen. It works great for the OBS purpose of, seeing my lovely face, but when it comes to hand cam, it's really less than ideal. So I kind of like ghetto rigged it / wired it up in order to have it so that you guys could see me playing the game on my hands. And it really has absolutely garbage resolution and quality. So if you're like, hey Jay, this hand cam footage is trash, that is the reason why. But I just wanted to give that fair shout out because you're definitely in for a treat for like some really garbage footage. And so with any champion I give ability breakdowns, what I'm trying to do is give them a value rating, and Quake is she's a little tricky to say the least. If you are a god level Quake player, she is easily worth rank 5. I probably wouldn't rank 3 as 6-star if she's available as a 6-star, but at the very least, okay, she's not. So you're safe with the 5-star. But as a 5-star, she is easily worth rank 5. You don't need her awakened. So long as you are a Quake god, she can do so many things and just do so much work and so much different content. But if you are not a Quake god, say you are only a Quake and Baker, I would not rank 5 her. I would bring her up to maybe rank 3 or rank 4, so you have access to that counter. Because even Quake and Bake, she makes a really good like boss killer, or like particularly if you have like a really tough fight, like a Mr. Sinister or those kinds of matchups, she can be really awesome for those kinds of matchups. But only if you're Quake and shaking is she really worth that max rank. And then like something worth noting is that her prestige at the time of making this video is 52. Not exactly the highest prestige in the game, and 8th in the science. So if you're bringing her up for prestige, you definitely need to look somewhere else because she definitely does not meet the bill there. So that said, diving into her abilities, we have her signature ability where it's really not needed if you're going to be like really learning Quake and dedicated to learning her, because you really want to never get hit, never want to take a block, and you essentially just sit at full health for the entire duration of the fight. And Quake, she blocks an additional 10 to 35% damage and redirects it back to the opponent. So if you are only Quake and Baking, you're using her strictly as a boss killer because you can't get a hold of the Quake and Shake playstyle, then the Awaken ability is relevant and it's useful, but generally speaking, I don't recommend it just because you definitely want to get a hold of the whole Quake and Shake playstyle. And like something else in addition is I run suicide masteries. In Quake, she doesn't have any way of like mitigating suicide, so you are just dying to poison, dying to bleed. But the thing is that with like max willpower, and like 1 point in coagulate, I lose like 10% of my health at the start of the fight, and then once the bleed debuff is off, poison kills you very slowly with max willpower, and it actually makes her a really good suicide friendly champion because you never are throwing specials, which means you're never taking recoil damage and you're never taking block damage, so you don't have to worry about getting chipped out over the course of the fight. And like even if you pop like a 20% revive on her, yeah, you'll be down to like 9%, but then you have like a solid 100 to 200 seconds to just sit there and Quake, and it's a really good time. So yeah, she's a fairly suicide friendly champion, and I know some people even prefer her that way because she gets a little more damage, and that's probably the biggest drawback for her, is that the playstyle, it's not the highest amount of damage per second, it's just essentially free damage, non-interactive damage, and that's what makes her so good. So going into Quake's abilities, her passive is that she evades all basic attacks against opponents with concussion. And so what this means is any light, medium, or heavy attack, just bear in mind that the evade is a short period, short duration window. So like long, heavy attacks, you're going to have to evade twice, like evade and then dodge. Like for example, if you have a thing and he's got you cornered because you're using the Quake and Shake playstyle, and he goes to throw a heavy, then you're going to need to like hold heavy to dodge the first hit, dodge to block to dex the second hit, and then hold heavy again to evade the third hit from thing, or like triple dodge or something like that in order to make sure you're not getting clipped by the heavy. But you know, that's just kind of like overly complex things that you'll learn as you get a hold of her, and something you don't have to worry about till later. For now, you can just curse the game and the AI and get, you know, a hold of the like basic use of her. So this concussion you get for the most part by holding heavy. So every time you hold heavy, you inflict concussion, you know, but that concussion drops as soon as you let go of heavy, which happens whenever they attack you, because evading naturally makes you drop concussion. So essentially, heavy is one free evade, one guaranteed evade, and while you are holding heavy, you are generating an earthquake, dealing passive damage to the opponent, so it can't be avoided. And as you're holding heavy, the opponent builds up aftershock charges every 0.48 seconds. You know, it's just a duration period, and those aftershocks, as they accumulate, eventually they pop on the opponent, and they well, when you're playing her as an attacker, it's essentially a guaranteed stun on the opponent, and then you get a concussion as well. So this is a really, really good time. And yes, when you're holding heavy and you're building up these aftershocks, you're going to get to a certain number of aftershocks, and you're going to get a 5-second concussion. And you could say, oh, I can use that 5-second concussion to get the guaranteed evade. But if you do that, you're going to get tripped up, because like the opponent's going to be comboing into you, and then the concussion's going to disappear, and you're not in the middle of your like Quake and Shake play style. So personally, I just completely ignore the additional concussion, and I only think mentally. I only have concussion as long as I'm holding heavy, and that's a really good way to play her. As far as specials, you don't really need to know what any of them do, since you should really never be throwing them at all. Personally, I don't pick one or the other, because it really doesn't matter. But if for some reason, you know, you've been hitting into the opponent, or maybe you've taken some damage and you have a special, all of her specials apply aftershock through blocks. So you can throw them whenever you want. You don't have to worry about timing them, and you'll get some free aftershocks which will eventually stun your opponent as well. The special 1 gives 2 points to the aftershock. Special 2 gives 3. The special 2 additionally has a 100% chance to inflict concussion, which again gives you that 5 seconds of guaranteed evade. But again, you don't really work around that. And the special 3 has 6 points in the aftershock, as well as a 100% chance to stun. But again, if you got to a special 3, something probably went wrong in your fight. As far as synergies, she doesn't need any of these synergies. I think the only one really worth mentioning is the Nick Fury synergy, but you do have critical rating, critical damage rating, ability accuracy increase, Quake and Black Widow gain ability accuracy, duration, and potency. All champions gain critical damage rating with Medusa, and then the Nick Fury synergy. So these 3 synergies, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Nick Fury, are the only 3 really worth mentioning. And the reason that is because sometimes you're using Quake in a fight where the opponent has like reduced ability accuracy on the attacker. So like one good example is the Collector. Dork Lessons has a really good example of where he like stacked Hawkeye and Black Widow on his team and then brought Quake and was able to literally get a one-shot on the Collector with Quake. You know, you do have to get all the way to the Collector, essentially only using Quake, but hey, that is an option if you need it. And it's just good to be aware that you can get some extra ability accuracy on Quake if you need it. But for the most part, you don't use either of those either. Quake is a standalone champion. And then this Nick Fury synergy is not something you use to benefit Quake, but something you use to benefit the rest of your team. So as long as Nick is alive, the first 3 unblocked hits from the opponent have a 100% chance to be evaded. And the thing to know with Quake is that when you're holding heavy and you're evading, it consumes one of these charges. So this does not provide you like an extra failsafe on Quake. So for Quake herself, it's useless, but as an overall synergy, it's actually very, very helpful. So one more thing is kind of like understanding the inputs with Quake. When you're playing Quake, what I kind of do to describe it is here. We can show you my notes, and I'll post these notes in the description as well, but we'll bring the snapshot over for you guys to read. So Yeah, you'll probably have to read in the description. But when the fight starts, you're always going to start by dodging back. You can start the fight with the heavy, but sometimes you're too slow and you end up getting comboed. It's really not worth the risk. My recommendation is to start every single fight by dodging backwards and then holding heavy, and then your champion will naturally evade, in which case you will return to another dodge heavy, and you will literally cycle through that all the way until you're in the corner. So dodge, fight start, dodge, heavy, evade, dodge, heavy, evade, dodge, heavy, evade. And then you're in the corner and you're able to do your standard Quake playstyle. And so what you need to remember is with your right thumb or your right finger or on the right side of the screen, you want to have two different inputs here. You're going to hold heavy, let your champion naturally evade. You're going to lift off of the right side of the screen. You're going to use the left side of the screen to dodge. And then you're going to re-input immediately after dodging your right heavy, and then you're going to rinse this cycle over and over again. My biggest tip for Quake after that is understanding auditory fight inputs, because a lot of the champions have really, really good sound effects for when they're missing or when you're evading, and you can use these to play the fight, and then you can use your focus on other aspects and buffs and nodes, so you don't have to watch the animation of the character. You can kind of just see the movement and understand that the attack is happening. There are notably champions who this doesn't work for, like Dormammu, whose attacks are really, really quiet. So when you're playing against Dormammu, you have to alternate to a visual Quake playstyle, which in my personal opinion is not as easy, because the auditory sounds on Quake are just absolutely nice and crisp, because essentially the lights, they make a kind of whiff sound effect, and the mediums make a kind of whoosh sound effect. And if you don't really understand onomatopoeia, I do apologize, but that is the best way I can describe them, because that is really what it sounds like. It is a whoosh on a medium and a whiff on a light. But if that doesn't make any sense, the auditory dodging doesn't make any sense, just rely on full visuals and learn to recognize when a combo ends in a light and when a combo ends in a medium, because the medium and light combo ends, they're very final. When you're watching the animations on a champion, they feel finished, and that's how you can kind of count combos up in your head, knowing that the maximum is 5, and then just do your rotation from there, because the hardest part of the Quake rotation is understanding when you need to double heavy, because there are a lot of situations where you can't just heavy dodge, rinse, repeat, and you have to actually pause for a moment and re-input heavy. In that instance, the most common one is when the opponent does a 5-hit combo, in which case you're the ideal pattern is heavy, dodge, heavy, dodge, heavy, and then the combo ends on their second medium, and then you're going to have to lift off with your thumb and then re-input the heavy so that you can start again the next rotation. And I don't really know a better way or a succinct way to describe that, so hopefully that is sufficient, but feel free to ask any kind of question in the
Good
comments
afternoon
below.
and welcome back.
Let's see. So sorry, I'm trying to find the proper video here. So we got it here. So this is the thumb gameplay with the awesomely horrible resolution. My apologies. And I'm playing at a weird angle, so I'm not playing the exact best, but you'll see I start with a dodge, I go into a heavy, I dodge back again, heavy, dodge back again, and then now I'm in my corner and I can play the way I want. So I'm holding heavy, left dodge, and I'm immediately putting in the input. So one thing that a lot of people screw up with Quake is they think they need to react to the evade or the dexterity or the animations of the opponent, and you really don't. The instant the opponent triggers your evade, you can immediately dodge. Every single time, you don't have to worry about the opponent doing a single attack. It will always be a minimum of 2, and if they throw a single one, my opinion is just curse kabam and say this game is rigged, and then revive Quake and start all over again. From there, it's just a matter of recognizing the light and medium ends and making sure you do your double heavy when it's needed. So whenever they end on a 5-hit combo or when they end on a 3-hit combo, essentially any odd combo number, you're going to need to do double heavy. And the nice thing is you have a nice little pause. So as you get practice and you get comfortable with the muscle memory, you'll be able to do that input just out of muscle memory. And essentially, you get this free stun window every period of time when the aftershock proc, and you just hold heavy. You just sit and wait. And the ideal is to never have to hit the opponent, but if they start pummeling into you, don't lose your cool. Just hold block, try to get a parry, or maybe even hit into the opponent, push them to a special like I do here, and then don't go into the heavy rotation. You're just trying to bait a special so you can consume their power. After you've baited their special, you can go right back into your Quake and Shake playstyle. I think that's the second thing. A lot of people, once they're starting to get hit or they've pushed the opponent to a special, they panic and they don't know what to do. All you have to do is switch back into like a regular parry combo playstyle. Hit into the opponent, dodge a special, and then once their power is depleted, you can go right back into Quake and Shaking. Good times for all. One of the things that happens to me super frequently is I'll accidentally parry on an opponent. And that happens because like you're using your right and your left thumbs on the screen, and your input might be a little slow. And when that happens, sometimes you're like going to dodge, but the block animation triggers instead. And this is the reason why I use the left side of the screen to dodge, because well-timed blocks are a lot more forgiving than poor-timed dodges. In that regard, if you're just a little too slow, you're just not quick enough, a parry can really save you from getting comboed, and using the left screen to dodge in this way really helps keep the inputs separate. And you'll see here, like I'm not pressing overly hard, just enough to register on the screen. Another quick tip is like make sure that you're not using like a really dense screen protector. I have a like special screen protector on my screen here. It's super thin, very malleable. It does mean that you do have to worry about like not dropping your phone super frequently, because it's not like the most crack resistant, but that's just kind of one of the realities. And this is just Quake. From here you just Quake and Shake. Hopefully this guide helps you out. Hopefully you check out Dork Lessons if you have not, and if I can answer any questions, feel free to let me know. But that said, we're just kind of gonna hang out and let this fight end. I'm playing at this like really weird angle. You can even see like up here in the top right, like this is my mouse holder, and my mouse is like down over here. I'm playing at this like angle, like pointing away from myself, and I'm like leaning over to see the screen. It's super uncomfortable, and that's why like my phone is moving all over the port. But if you're wondering, okay, so like is Winter Soldier a good practice dummy? My suggestion is not to use Winter Soldier when you're trying to learn Quake to start. He's really good once you like trying to master him, but going into Winter Soldier, it's not a fun time. It just feels bad when you're trying to learn Quake, because you're gonna die a lot. So my recommendation is actually a duel. Duel someone, find someone with nice, easy animations. Winter Soldier is always a good one if you can find one, but there are plenty of other champions that you don't have to worry too much about. And then just duel that person over and over and over again until you can like consistently Quake them to death. And once you can do that, then jump into Winter Soldier for like a nice, solidly long Quake fight. And then once you can one-shot Winter Soldier with like the equivalent of a max rank 4-star or even a max rank 3-star if you're a Quake god, then you are ready to call yourself a Quake master. Some final tips is just bear in mind that when you are using Quake, it is an evade mechanic. So if the opponent has True Strike or Anti-Evade, then you are SOL. Additionally, if the opponent has any form of passive power gain like Havoc or Hyperion, those fights can be incredibly frustrating and not ideal for Quake. Although it is possible to Quake a Hyperion, particularly if he's unduped, because you can use the concussion to prevent the power gain from triggering, or you can alternatively constantly switch from Quake and Shaking to like standard play while you bait specials. It's definitely less ideal. But however, Quake for Havoc is a really good time as long as you are comfortable switching into a regular playstyle to bait a special one, because as long as you have a concussion, Havoc's plasma charges, they don't trigger. So yes, he's gaining power passively, but it's at a very slow rate, so you can use Quake to counter Havoc, and it's a very good time. Just know that you're gonna have to switch between baiting special ones and Quake and Shaking. So other than that, that's Quake. Hopefully it's helped someone, and I hope you guys have a great time. Peace.